Hi everyone, Alex Rocateli here, Forage Systems Extension Specialist at Oklahoma State University. Today let's talk about nitrate toxicity in livestock. First, let's understand the nitrate toxicity. Nitrate in forage can really cause very bad harm in your cattle. Actually, it can kill your cattle by asphyxiation. What I mean with that? When the animal consumes a forage with high concentrations of nitrate, what happens is the bacteria in the rumen can convert that nitrate in nitrite, and the nitrite, which is poisonous to the cattle, goes to the bloodstream. In the bloodstream, what happens is the nitrite is going to bind with the hemoglobin in the blood, and what happens is the animal cannot carry anymore the oxygen from the lungs to the organs. Therefore, the animal lacks oxygen, dying asphyxiated. So that's pretty much what nitrate toxicity does to the animal. Now, what are the symptoms that we need to be watching in the field so we can spot it that the animal is being poisoned by nitrate? If you see an animal that is having a hard time to breathe, labored breathing, also an animal shaking, you see that is having tremors on the body, weakness, not moving much, also some bluish in the mouth, blue color in the mouth, and a blood that is chocolate brown. So those are symptoms that's showing that your animal is being poisoned by nitrate toxicity. So which plants should we be watching in the field that can really accumulate high concentrations of nitrate? I recommend that you pause this table here, pause this video, and look at this table, especially here in the ones that has high potential. Now, I would like to make a note. Here in Oklahoma, nitrate toxicity, it's a hot topic during summer because we have severe drought stress conditions in some years. So if you have a pasture during summer here, that are the plants that you need to be watching for. During summer, I would say take care with fescue, Johnson grass, sorghum, Sudan grasses, sorghum Sudans also, and pearl millet. Those are plants that really can concentrate high amount of nitrate. Also, if you have pastures with some forbs there in high concentration and you are fertilizing that pasture heavily, pay attention because those plants are also toxic to the animal. Now we have other plants, as you can see here, Bermuda grass, blue stem, weeping love grass, that has low potential of accumulating nitrate. So that is most likely that you are not going to have problems with nitrates if the cattle is grazing. So we already know which plants really can accumulate high amount of nitrates. But in which condition those plants is going to accumulate amount that can be toxic, bad to the animal? Well, those plants is going to accumulate nitrate anytime that they are put in a stress condition that suppress plant growth, right? So most common here in Oklahoma, especially during summer, is drought, as I mentioned. So during drought, the plant is not growing at all for the lack of water, and what happens is it starts to accumulate nitrate. However, when comes a drought ending rain and the plant resumes good growth, that is the time that the plant can peak its nitrate concentration and be actually lethal. High concentrations that can kill your animal. So be watching during a drought condition, for sure is accumulating nitrate, but after a rain that resumes good growth, good conditions for growth, that's where it's very problematic. Other conditions are cloudy days after some cool season can accumulate nitrate during a freeze. Also, a little obvious, but it's good to mention. Dry land plants, pastures that in a dry land condition has a higher chance to accumulate nitrate than a pasture that you are well irrigating during the summer. Now, other factor here is the stage where your plants are. So a young immature plant has higher chances to accumulate nitrate than an old mature plant. Also, and that's very important, is talk about where the nitrate toxicity is in the plant. The nitrate toxicity, most of it is concentration. It's on the bottom part of the stalks. Let's say from soil up to 6 inches. That bottom of the plant, those 6 inches, that's exactly where most of the nitrate concentration is. Of course, at the top you might have some nitrates, but the majority of the nitrates are there, and that's very good information for management. Other important factor is nitrogen fertilization. Do not heavily fertilize your fields with nitrogen. That can really stimulate nitrate toxicities. Now, when you talk about nitrogen fertilization on corn, sorghum, and suntan grasses, I would recommend 50 pounds of nitrogen per acre. That would translate in 110 pounds of urea per acre. You can go as up as 100 pounds of nitrogen per acre, but I would recommend that you stay on the 50. Now, if you really need more nitrogen there because you have a soil with low fertility, try to split that application. However, that splitting application, I would recommend if you are haying that field. For instance, you apply 50, and so you wait for the growth, and you cut it and you hay it. And then, before you start regrowth, you just apply the other 50 pounds per acre of nitrogen and let it grow. Now, if you are grazing and you finish your first grazing event, you are taking your cattle out and you expect to graze that plant again after regrowth, pretty soon do not apply a second hand of nitrogen, because those young plants can really accumulate nitrate easily here in the Oklahoma weather. Also, if we have an imbalance of nitrogen and phosphorus in the soil, for instance, we have high nitrogen and low phosphorus content, that can even aggravate nitrate concentration in the plant. Therefore, make sure that you are sampling your soil, send to laboratorial analysis, and fertilizing according to the results to make sure that you have a good stand of nitrogen and the other nutrients for the plant. Finally, pH. It's very important that your pH is going to be higher than 5.5. I would recommend your pH range from 6 to 6.5. In low pH, what happens is the soils will bind with the phosphorus, make the phosphorus unavailable to the plant, so that nitrogen and phosphorus imbalance will also happen. So now let's discuss a little bit on forage nitrate levels that is acceptable or not acceptable in cattle. So when nitrate concentration in forage is around 0 to 3000 ppm, we consider it safe for all cattle. However, from 2500 ppm above, you can start to see some decrease in milk production when you're talking about dairy cattle. When we have a concentration from 3000 to 5000, we start to have low risk on reduced breeding, and also we can have some abortions. Now, when we increase the level and it is within 5,000 to 10,000 ppm, we start to have some risk for cattle. It may cause mid-to-term abortions and weak newborn calves. Also, it may decrease growth and milk production in cattle. Now, when the concentration is higher than 10,000, that's where the big issues start. It's potentially toxic for all cattle, can cause abortions, acute toxicity symptoms, and also can be lethal, can kill the cattle. Alright, so far we had discussed the basics for we understand nitrate toxicity. Now let's imagine that a producer thinks as a suspicion that there is nitrate toxicity in his or her forage. What it's supposed to do? In my opinion, the first step is sampling and testing your forage. There are two types of tests available for nitrates. The first test that I want to mention is a qualitative test, where we use a reagent named diphenylamine that is a liquid. So we open the stem of the plant, we drop this substance. If that turns dark blue, that means that it is positive. That's indicating that we have nitrates on that sample. As you can see, it just changed color. So it's pretty much a yes or a no. We're gonna know how much of nitrate we have in that sample. Also, there are some chances that we are gonna have a false positive. What I mean with that? It can really turn dark blue. However, we might have no nitrates concentration there, even though the results were positive. Now, the opposite is not true. If you place the substance, the diphenylamine, in the stem and no colors change happened, that is a negative. The chances of that negative be wrong is very, very low. Therefore, this test can be used as a first screening. If it is negative, we are okay, no nitrates. Now, if it is positive, means that we have a higher chance of having nitrates there. But at the same time, we are not 100% sure, and we don't know the concentration, how much nitrate we have there. That's why that positive test results needs to be followed with a quantitative test, where we are gonna sample appropriated your forage, and then you are gonna submit to laboratorial analysis. Get in touch with your account educator. He is the best person to help you forwarding this sample to the right place for analysis. Now, how we suppose to do our sampling? If we are talking about a field where we have plants standing and growing, first thing that we need to know is that the nitrate accumulation is not uniform throughout a field. As you can see here, this is an example of a field that is 5 acres. If you look at here, in this region that I'm showing in red, you can see that in this spot here, we have a plant that was tested with 43,800 ppm of nitrogen. That is very high. Again, higher than 10,000 is toxic to the animal. But at the same time, pretty close to that, we have another plant that just tested for 9,590 ppm. That means that is a kind of a borderline of being toxic to the animal. So as you can see, we have a high variability. That's why we're supposed to split our area in small sub-areas and then sample plants inside of these sub-areas, as I'm saying here, and then submit samples for each one of them. So in each one of those sub-areas, small areas, what we need to do is collect a total of 20 plants, cut those plants in pieces of 2 to 3 inches, combine all those plants in a bucket, and so, of course, your sample is going to be big. So what you need to do is to reduce the size of the sample to fit in a bag. For that, we can use the quartering method. The quartering technique consists in opening that sample in a kind of an oval, rounded way, and then we are going to split them in 4 quarters. And then we are going to just take it off 2 quarters, thresh it, and hold the other 2 quarters and combine. If you do that and your sample is pretty much big for the size of the bag that you need to submit to analysis, I recommend that you repeating this technique several times until you find a sample that has a suitable size for the bag for analysis. So that's pretty much the quartering technique. Now, let's say that you have hay and you want to know how much nitrate you have in that hay. Well, if you are talking about small square bales, what I would recommend is take one core sample from each square and combine core samples from no more than 20 neighboring squares in a field. Again, don't take much more numbers of squares in one composite sample because you have a high variation in a field. Therefore, that number may not mean much because it's going to be just the average of your overall field. Now, if you talk about large bales, take 2 to 3 core samples per bale. If it is a rounded bale, as I'm showing here, make sure that you are taking your core samples from the curved face. Never take from the flat face. And again, combine cores from 10 neighboring bales, no more than that. Let's move to the last section of this presentation. Some tips on how to manage high nitrate levels in forage. So, if you intend to graze some forage that has high nitrate levels, the best idea is to wait. Wait 5 to 7 days at least of good growing conditions before introducing cattle. As I mentioned before, if you are in a drought condition, that's pretty common here during summer in Oklahoma, and then comes an ending drought rain, the amount of nitrates is gonna peak right after. So the best idea is to let those plants growing in a good condition. So what's gonna happen is the plant has time to metabolize all that nitrate. Therefore, the levels will normally decrease to levels lower than 3,000 in 5 to 7 days. Now, if after a rain that finished the drought, we have cloud days, be aware that those cloud days actually are days that we have suppressed growth and the nitrate concentration is still going to be there. So we need to make sure that we have 5 to 7 days of good growing conditions where we don't have any kind of growth suppression. Now, let's say you are short in forage and you need to introduce your cattle in some forage that you know that's going to have some nitrate levels there. If that's the case, I would tell, don't introduce cattle that's hungry. When the animal is very hungry, the animal is going to eat fast, therefore is going to go and eat completely the whole plant, the upper and bottom parts. Remember, that stalk 6 inches low, that's where the high nitrate concentration is in the plant. So that's why we supposed to avoid that the cattle graze the whole plant, to avoid grazing that low part of the plant. So in this case, make sure that you give some forage to the cattle that has no nitrate, and then you introduce the cattle that's not hungry on these plants with nitrates. So what happens is the animal will just graze the upper part, the lush material, where the nitrate concentration is not going to be high. Therefore, it's going to have less nitrate getting into its bloodstream. Use also a light stocking rate to decrease cattle competition for forage. For the same reason, too many cattle at the same place, they're going to start to compete for food and they're going to start to graze the plant lower. Now, move the animals to other pastures when your stubble height is reaching 6 inches. Again, at that 6 inches, that's where the high nitrate toxicity is. Now, if the point is you know that you have nitrates on your forage and unfortunately you need to live with it, right? Because it's what you got it and you know that the conditions are not good for those nitrates go away very easily. So you can adapt the cattle to nitrate. So what you need to do is limit the grazing of those nitrate forages and start to increase the time of grazing day after day. So let's say in the first day, you first place your cattle to graze some forage that has no nitrate, then you introduce and just allow 3 hours and a half. The next day, you are going to introduce but allow 4 hours and a half. The next day, 5 hours. So as you can see, you go progressively increasing the time. That gives times for the rumen day after day get adapted on handling the nitrate, converting that less in nitrite, so less of the nitrite is going to the bloodstream. Also, there is some propionic bacteria that can help the animal to tolerate better the nitrate on the plants. So that are the tips if you are planning to graze. Now, tips for haying. Something that you need to be aware is that cured hay will not decrease its nitrate concentration over time. Once you cut a plant with high nitrates, that plant dries, the concentration of nitrate in that cured hay is going to continue as was before. So that's why it's very important to make that the concentration of nitrate decreases prior to cutting. So again, wait 5 to 7 days where the plant has good growing conditions so that nitrate can be metabolized and then cut. Now, if you are in a hurry, you can wait 3-4 days, but make sure that you are increasing your stubble height when cutting and leave that 6 inches of stubble there. So you are leaving most of the nitrate toxicity in the field. Now, another choice is to opt for silage or haylage. In this case, the forage is going to be pickled, in other words, it's going to ferment it, and the fermentation process will decrease the concentration of nitrates. Now, as I mentioned, it's going to decrease depending on how high your concentration was originally when you cut that forage. The fermentation plots may decrease that, but some nitrates is still going to be there. Therefore, before feeding any silage or haylage, test to see the nitrate concentration. Now, if unfortunately you purchase or you have some hay that is high nitrate, as I mentioned before, it's not going to go away. It's going to be there. So the best option is to dilute that high nitrate hay mixing with other low nitrate feeds. In other words, doing a ration. So that's pretty much what I would like to discuss today with you about nitrate toxicity in livestock. If you have any questions, please contact us.